but the madrega here of the Levi is to rise enough above it so you can really keep love flowing, keep clarity, remember that Hashem is there, remember that there's a purpose. Gam zu l'tova, right? There's got to be something there. So it's a subtlety, right? This is it's almost as it's a spiritual level that it's not either the monastery or the marketplace, right? Either Kodesh HaKodashim or the, working the land, but it's more an internal sort of like distinction and ability to, to wave, to shake off the dominance of, definitely the anger or any other attachments, anger or greed or concern or worry or.
אלוהי, נשמה שנתת בי, טהורה.
For those of you who may have the Netivot Shalom, we're in Bamidbar, obviously in the Parshat Teruma. I'm sorry, Behalotcha, and we're on page Mem Hey, reading Tnufa Leviim. This is the story here in the Parsha where Moshe is instructed to, and Aaron is instructed to initiate the Levim into their service, because it also explains that they were dedicated, the whole Shevet of Levi were dedicated to the divine worship in the temple, as a substitute for the firstborn of every family, and this is related to the death of the firstborn during the 10 plagues, etc. So it's a very, very special thing. And the question that Chazal asked and the Slonimer asked, and always bothered me, is how does that happen? How do you take a person and wave them? I'm going to go here right to the Slonimer, and he starts by quoting, this is Bamidbar, chapter 8, verse 11. והניף אהרון את הלוויים תנופה לפני אדוני. And Aaron waved the Leviim a wave before God, which is significant here that it says a wave before God. והיו לעבוד את עבודת אדוני, and then they were ready to perform the divine service in the temple. והעמדת את הלוויים לפני אהרון, and you shall stand or present the Leviim before Aaron, the priest, v'lifnei vanav, and before his sons. Aha, you see, he did it with his sons. It says v'lifnei vanav, right? So that was Aaron and his 4 sons, 2 sons at this point. Right? Vehenafta otam tnufa l'Adonai, and you shall wave them a wave for God, a waving for God. And ואחרי כן יבואו הלוויים לעבוד וגומר, and then the Leviim would come and perform their service. והנפת אותם תנופה, and you shall wave them a waving. It says it 3 times. And that's the quote from Bamidbar, from the Parsha. ורש"י מבאר עניין 3 התנופות, and Rashi is commenting on these 3 wavings that שנאמרו בפרשה זו, that are mentioned in this Parsha. הראשונה לפני קהת, says Rashi. The first one was referring to the children of the clan of Kahat. So the tribe of Levi were divided into three clans. The first clan was the clan of Kahat. The first waving is referring to the clan of Kahat. ולכך נאמר בם יהיו לעבוד את עבודת השם. that is why it says about them that they were, you could say, designated to perform divine worship, because they were tasked with the service that related to the Holy of Holies. So you could say that the clan of Kahat were the superior, in the hierarchy of the three clans, they were the superior clan, and their specialty was the Holy of Holies. Aaron v'Shulchan v'chulei. So the ark and the table of the shewbread, etc. So they really had the more important implements of the temple were under their care. V'ashniya, the second mention of the Tnufa, was for the children of Gershon. That was the second clan. V'kach ne'emar bam Tnufa la'Adonai. That's why it says about them that it was a waving to God. שאף עליהם הייתה עבודת הקודש, יריעות וכרסים הנראים בבית קודש הקודשים. So they were responsible for the
drapes and the curtains.
Drapes and the curtains, thank you. And the hooks, etc., that are around the Holy of Holies. And the third mention of the Tnufa was relating to the children of Merari, which were the third clan, and they were the carriers of the lesser implements, everything else basically. ויש לבאר משמעות התנופה שנאמרה בלוויים על דרך עבודת השם. And we need to explain the meaning of the waving that is related to the Levim, and how that relates. What does that mean in relation to their divine service? משמע שלידי התנופה הוכשרו להיכנס לעבוד את עבודת השם, which is implied that through this waving they were certified or initiated, you could say, to enter the divine service. ומהו עניין הדרגות בפרשת התנופה? And what is this? What does it mean that there were different rungs or levels in this description of the waving? One to Kahat, one to Gershon, one to Merari. Okay, in that order. All right. So as usual, the Slonimer lays out the question, and the things we're curious about here. And the question also already hints to the answer a little bit, So if you have levels, what are those levels, right? And why? And so I would maybe open up the question a little further. What does it mean to have levels in a spiritual context, or in divine service, in a godly context? Are there levels? I mean, almost goes without saying, sure, there are levels, right? I mean, the spiritual path and divine worship and in antiquity as of today, and the Slonimer is going to make that connection through a teaching. He quotes the Rambam in Hilchot Shemitah v'Yovel. The Rambam said, absolutely, this is, it wasn't only a mitzvah for that time. We'll get to that. I'm jumping ahead a little bit. It's not only a mitzvah of that time, but it instructs us also about it's a mitzvah for our time. On what do we learn for this about how do we walk up those rungs and attain, God willing, attain those different levels? All right. Anything you want to add before I continue, Rabbi?
No, I think the Slonimer sets it up as usual. The other parts of this ritual are fairly easily understood because it's made clear why they had to happen, why they had to be shaved, and why they had to have purifying waters sprinkled upon them.
That's right.
But this aspect of the ritual there's no explanation given. In the Chumash, it's a mystery.
That's right.
So this idea of the lifting and the waving
Right.
begs to be understood.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And then within that, we seem to have three specific mentioning, and all the commentators point out that it's mentioned 3 times, this waving, each corresponding to the different part of the tribe of Levi. So there's the waving, and within the waving, there are some three different levels of waving.
Mm-hmm.
So this is what we're going to discover
right
now.
So I'm going to jump now to page Mem Vav, if you have the book with you, in the middle of the first column on page Mem Vav, skip ahead a little bit. Inyan tnufa shebaleviim, the whole issue of the waving of the Leviim, שבכדי שיתעלו למדרגתם הגבוהה, in order for them to ascend to their high stature, as I would take it here that he means their high statures as servants of the temple and of God, because they're, they're humans like all humans. They're Israelites like all Israelites, but they're dedicated to, specifically to have a spiritual focus, right? For which is greater, I guess, than the rest of the Shvatim, of the people. So they need to be initiated into. They need to be. It's sort of like an extra bar mitzvah, you could say, because their level of mitzvah is a different, it's a different level of mitzvah, right? So in order to step into this high position, it was necessary to shake up their reality. וירימו אותם לעולם יותר גבוה, and to elevate them to a world that is higher. ובתנופה זו ניער אהרון אותם מענייני העולם הזה. So with this waving, Aaron the priest shakes them out of their attachment to this world. ענייני העולם הזה, of mundane concerns, right? They're being physically sort of, kind of, you could say, shocked out of, or kicked out of, or slapped out of, their attachment to this world, because they're really moving into a higher purposed kind of existence. And that's how he brings them into divine service. So I just want to say that I appreciate the physicality of that. When I read the Chumash, it's like it doesn't immediately jump out at me that this is, it's not just a waving, it's not just a ritual, but it's an actual, they need to be put in the blender, as it were. Something has to be shaken up there.
We see by the tribe of Levi on a very basic physical level that they were not given a portion of Eretz Yisrael, the land of Israel.
That's right.
So right away we see that they're somehow detached. They have to live a life detached from attachment to land and everything that land means on an individual, for an individual and for a people. Right? People have a tendency to attach themselves to physical land, right? And a lot of good things come out of that, and a lot of not so great stuff comes out of that. And so right away we see that within the Jewish people, there's one tribe set aside that doesn't get involved.
Right. The Chazal say, "Moben achasim, moben dagot," right? If you have a lot of estate, so you have worries, right?
Right.
So they
You
were.
got to put a fence around it. You need the guards.
I mean, everything that goes with real estate, you have to take care of it. You worry about it. Its value. It's whatever its care, and
Right.
then work it, right? Because I mean, land meant agriculture, meant
Right.
so,
Right.
so that was. Yeah. Anyway, they're relieved from all that. They're shaken away from all that. So if in the person of the Levi there was any still trace of the desire for for that kind of involvement, it's it's shaken out of them.
Right.
ומשום כך גם היו כמה דרגות בתנופה זו למעלה מזו. And for that reason there were levels in this waving, one above the other. ולפי גודל הייעוד בעבודת השם, כן שיעור התנופה. Intensity of the waving was related to the greatness of the task that the Levi would have. The higher the purpose, or the higher the holiness of the task, the greater the waving. ולפי גודל הייעוד בעבודת השם, כן שיעור התנופה, ולא הרי התנופה של בני קהת, שעבודתם קודש הקודשים, and the waving of the clan of Kahat that were involved with the Holy of Holies in the temple, ומשום כך נאמר בהם תנופה לפני אדוני, and that's why in the Chumash it says, with relation to Bnei Kahat, that they were waved before Hashem, והיו לעבוד את עבודת אדוני, and they were designated to perform the divine service. L'tnufat Bnei Gershon, to the way that the description of the waving of Bnei Gershon, or Bnei Merari, Shebam Ne'mar Rak Tnufa L'Adonai. It does not say only a waving to God, not a waving before God. So the language is different, and it's lesser with the Bnei Gershon and Bnei Merari. שלפי עבודתם היו צריכים תנופה אחרת. That for whom, according to the style and the quality of their tasks, they needed a different kind of waving. כל אחד לפי הדרגה שהיה צריך להגיע אליו, each one according to the rung they had to attain. כך הייתה בו התנופה שלדע נכנסו לעבודת השם. According to the rung, so was the kind of waving that was performed on them. ויש לומר שהמקור לדברי הרמב"ם, שדרגה זו שייכת לכל איש מישראל. So now we need to go back to the Rambam in Ilchot Shemitah v'Yovel, that this level, or this rung, or leveling, different rungs, it actually applies to every person in Israel, not only to the Levites. שיכול להיבדל ולעמוד לשרת ולשרת והיה ואדוני יהא חלקו ונחלתו. Each person of Israel can actually separate oneself and dedicate oneself to divine service, and to be in the category of God will be your portion and your inheritance. So what does that mean? It means that this was the level that the Levim were on, because, like you said before, Eli, that every tribe of Israel got a portion of the land. The portion the Levim got were God. God was their portion. Okay, so that is literally, you could say that they inherited the divine, and that expressed itself through their service in the temple. But metaphorically, you could say that that they attained a spiritual level where they were detached from mundane material things, and they were in this state that God is their portion. They have a closer connection. They're in this, constant mind space or consciousness, right, of Hashem. And the Rambam says here that any person of Israel can step into that space, can achieve that level. And that, I don't want to get ahead of myself. Let the Slonimer, he says it best, so I'm going to continue here with the words of the Slonimer. Even though even though the Torah is saying this only about the Levim, but it is implied in that teaching. Why? Because, in other words, how do we know that even though it's only relating to the Levim, it applies to all of us and to our time? Because we know that the Torah is eternal, and what it teaches is not only related to that time when it happened, but to every generation. You could say that this waving of the Levim was only related to that generation. So you could say that that was only a one-time thing, right? It was only that generation of those Levim were dedicated to a divine service. Ela mizela Rambam, but from this the Rambam learns sharayon hapnimi shebamitzvah hu nitzchi. But if the Torah teaches us, what the Torah teaches us is eternal, therefore the essence of this mitzvah is eternal. So what is the essence of this mitzvah? Shechol ish ve'ish mibnei Yisrael yichol lekayem inyan tnufa. That every person, each man and woman among the people of Israel, are able to perform this mitzvah of waving. How? By shaking off and separating oneself from all matters, all worldly matters, and to become a holy of holies. Right? We're all holy, but we can do something to become holy of holy. Right? Is what the Slonimer say. Again, how? To remove oneself from all the mundane matters that everybody else, that most people are chasing and pursuing. And that is the way a person would enter the divine service, lizkot, to merit, lebchinat, the aspect of Adonai chilko v'nachalato, that God is your portion, your inheritance. All right. There we have it. One of the things that we know about Yahadut is that, one of the things that differentiates the Jewish tradition as opposed to other traditions is that we don't do asceticism per se. We don't do celibacy, for instance, right? So Chazal have always taught us that our spirituality is a spirituality in this world. We bring Hashem into this world, right? But here the Slonimer and the Rambam are saying there is also another option, according to the Torah, and that's to emulate the Levim. Thoughts on that?
Well, the thought that crossed my mind when I'm listening is, they say you can't have it both ways, but I think in this, when rising above, in other words, not separating from this idea of lifting with our feet just off the ground, not up on a mountaintop, isolating ourselves, but we're in the world, we're part of the world, we see what goes on, but this idea of not allowing ourselves to get swept away by the tidal waves of what's happening, to just be above it, to see things clearly from a little bit of a above perspective. And this reminded me of something that we talk about, the Levi and the Kohen. Now, the Kohen is essentially hugging and lifting up the Levi. And it's really interesting in Kabbalah, in Jewish mysticism, Levi represents Gvura. Levi represents anger, actually. His father said, you're an angry guy. They kidnapped his sister. He got angry, killed the whole town of people.
Yeah.
Levi is known for his anger. The Kohen, Aaron HaKohen, are known for their kindness, benevolence, and love.
Yeah.
So this idea that when we see things happening, I'm alluding to what's happening right now around us,
right.
that things that upset us, that make us angry. So the idea is to envelop ourselves with a kind of a coating of love and lift ourselves a little bit above it, that this is the way to conquer, to conquer this is to get hugged and lifted up by unconditional love.
Yeah.
As a way to not suppress things that a person can be legitimately angry about, but to provide a keli, a usable keli for and channel that through loving kindness.
Right. So it's I love what you're saying, because I get the picture of a loving detachment. So this is not a disconnection.
Right.
This is not stepping away, going into the monastery, but it's an internal detachment. Internal detachment that allows for clarity and allows for love to remain. Because it's easy to fall. I mean, anger will take me over, right? It's easy to fall into that. But the madrega here of the Levi is to rise enough above it so you can really keep love flowing, keep clarity, remember that Hashem is there, remember that there's a purpose. Gam zu l'tova, right? There's got to be something there. So it's a subtlety, right? This is it's almost it's a spiritual level, that it's not either the monastery or the marketplace, right? Either Kodesh HaKodashim or the working the land, but it's more an internal sort of like distinction and ability to to wave, to shake off the dominance of definitely the anger or any other attachments, anger or greed or concern or worry or all the typical sort of weighty stressors that come with mundane pursuit and letting the world kind of suck us in, right? Yeah. Beautiful. Yeah, thank you. So we're going to conclude with the last paragraph here. It's a beautiful conclusion where he's going to talk about specifically what are those three levels spiritually. What does it mean to have a kahat and a gershon and a merari in terms of the inner workings of consciousness, and how do we do a waving or a elevating on each one of those levels? And here it is. V'inyan b'nei kahat uv'nei gershon uv'nei merari shayach etzel kol echad b'fratut. So the energy, the quality of kahat and gershon and merari applies to each person individually. Sheyesh be'adam tachtiim, shniim, v'shlishim. In each person, we have the lower, the medium, and the higher. So midat hamoach, midat halev va'evarim. That means this is the energy of the mind, the energy of the heart, and the energy of the physicality of the limbs. וכאשר רוצה להיכנס ולהתעלות בעבודת השם, and when a person wants to elevate oneself and go into the place of divine service, צריך לעשות תנופה בכל חלקיו. A person has to make the waving in all those sections. את המוח צריך לטהר ולרומם להשם יתברך. One needs to elevate the mind, to purify it and to elevate it to Hashem. ואת הלב, and so with the heart, וכן כל האיברים, כל אחד לפי עניינו, and also with all the limbs, not even all the limbs as one unit, but all the limbs, each limb with its own specific, qualities and requirements and considerations. לנערו ולטהרו מכל חלקי הרע ולהיות קודש קודשים. So what we need to do is to shake it and to purify it from all the dross and to turn it into the Holy of Holies, right? Each one of those levels. ועל ידי כן יגיע לדרגת השם חלקך ונחלתך. And through this work on all three levels and all the details of the Evarim, a person can attain the level of God is your portion and your inheritance. Yeah. שזה העושר הגדול ביותר. And he concludes by saying, the greatest happiness is exactly this. שיילוד אישה יכול להשיגו. The greatest joy, the greatest happiness that any person can attain is this waving, this process. So Ellie, sometimes, it's sometimes I like to conclude, to summarize, and kind of like have a concluding commentary, but I don't have it here. This is like, I'm humbled. This speaks for itself. Really have nothing else. Yeah, there's nothing else to add. So before we go, I just want to say that I want to invite you to come join us every Wednesday morning at 9:00. And the way to join us on Zoom, is to go to meetup.com and sign up through Meetup. So meetup.com, our lesson here is called Spiritual Torah Study. Look up Spiritual Torah Study on meetup.com. Join us every Wednesday at 9:00 with Rabbi Eli SOIEFER and myself, Rabbi Reuben Modek. We'd love to have you actually take part in the discussion and learn spiritual Torah together with us. For now, shalom and thank you for being here.